We are going over 5 potential reasons you attract toxic people into your life. It's time to detox. It's time to remove these people from your life. And so I'm going to give you what those 5 reasons are, at least 5 of the reasons that can allow for this kind of person to come into your life, and how you can change the way you do things, how you can change your decisions, not only so that it removes the current toxic people in your life, but prevents more from coming in, while also opening the door for much more positive influences to come in. So that's coming up next. Hi there, my name is Dave and this is Heart Space if you're new to the channel, where we are creating videos every single day from my heart to yours to help you live life in your way. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and bell icon down below so you don't miss any of the videos that we release. Now, it is very hard to grow as a spiritual being. It is very hard to live a growth-centric life when you have toxic people surrounding you, especially on a near daily basis. But one thing we have to do is take responsibility for our decisions that led up for these people coming in. Now, for a lot of us, a lot of these habits that led to our later decisions were formed in childhood and we didn't have too much control over. But once we become aware that we are making these decisions or have had these habits formed, it will do us a lot of good to identify that and then to start to work in order to remove these habits, remove the things that allowed for these people to come in. So I'm going to be going over what those 5 things are, starting in reverse order with number 5. So number 5 is you just never adjusted your standards. And this is something I really relate to because especially when I was younger, I would just let anyone who would come in just be in. I didn't have any filtration mechanism for people that come into my life. Whereas today I do. And I'll go over how you can do that as well. But you don't really have any standards. Maybe it's because you feel you're lonely, or maybe you have a poor self-image. So you're just like, anyone who will take me, anyone who will give me attention, anyone that will let me hang out with them, I'll be with that person. But this, of course, is not going to result usually in good partnerships, friendships, or any fair, equal treatment by any stretch of the imagination. And in my own life, when I allowed people like this into my life, it led to me being taken advantage of. It led to me, being in relationships I didn't want to be in. It led me to so many things that I would not put up with now and would have boundaries against right now. And so by raising your standards on the type of person you will allow into your life will automatically filter certain people out. For example, you could say, I'm not going to become close with people that hold values that are radically different from mine. For example, let's say one of your values is freedom. You believe in freedom of speech and things of that nature. But then there's this person who's trying to come into your life who believes that some people shouldn't have the right to say what they want to say, or some people, need to be told what to do because it's in their best interest, or whatever else it is. Let's say it's very, very far removed from what your beliefs are. That might be a cause for you to be like, okay, again, I honor whatever this person's beliefs are in the sense that they are allowed to believe whatever they believe. That is their reality to create, but that doesn't mean I need to allow them into mine. That doesn't mean I need to get close with this person. And so when you raise your standards of the type of person you will allow in, it allows you to identify the toxic traits in others. It allows you to identify people who are only going to bring you down, perhaps affect your energy, affect what you're trying to do in life, and you can prevent them from coming in. Now, if you already have people like this in your life, the easiest thing I can tell you is to remember that where your focus goes, energy flows. And if you take your focus off these people, spend less time with them where you can, the energy, the connection with those people will start to diminish. For example, if you hang out in friends groups where you just don't feel good, or maybe you just don't feel connected to this crowd of people, even if you've been with them for a very long time, it might be time just to stop hanging out in those circles bit by bit, or maybe even all at once. It's up to you. But when you raise your standards of the kind of person you're going to allow at least closely into your life, intimately into your life, it is one of the best ways to make sure that toxicity does not enter in this form. Now, number 4 is something I already mentioned, but you have a poor self-image. You see, we always attract the equivalent of what we are, or how we see ourselves. And so a lot of times you've probably seen this, people who are not able to stand up for themselves, or would be considered what we call doormats, people walk all over them, end up attracting a lot of the time takers. But someone who has boundaries and doesn't allow for this stamps it out very quickly. So for example, for someone who has boundaries, let's say a taker tries to come in, at the first pretty much sight of this. Someone who has boundaries will be like, no, 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 I'm not going to allow you to do that, or they just won't hang out with them again. You know, as someone who used to be a huge doormat, I mean, the things I used to just allow people to do and I put up with, and you know, I would second guess and be like, oh no, it'll be fine, it will change, whatever else it is. It's too many times to count. And it wasn't until I really set boundaries and went, if this person starts displaying these signs, or, you know, I see this person has this kind, you know, this is the kind of way they do, you know, it's kind of a manipulative thing, whatever else it is, I cut it out completely. You know, I don't really give a second chance when it comes to those kinds of things when I think someone is going to take advantage of me or is already trying to. Now, sometimes a person like this every now and then will come into my life because there might be some residue energy from when I was like that. But again, it's easy for me to recognize and boom, just cut out. And as a result, it has allowed me to bring in much more loving, kind, well-intentioned, great-hearted people that I'm so glad to have in my life. I mean, when I started cutting people out of my life that were toxic, it allowed for beautiful, beautiful relationships to form. And there are still people from my past that I still have in my life that weren't toxic, but there's some that were. Now, again, this came from my poor self-image. I didn't have a good self-image of myself when I was younger. When I was a kid, teenager, young adult, throughout all those years, I was very depressed and thought very, very little of myself. And I thought, like in the first one, I had to hang out with people. I had to, you know, be around people, even if I was being ridiculed, even if it was clear I was being put down, or if I was being used to prop someone else up, or whatever else it was, or I was just the pity person they brought with them. Whatever it was, you know, I allowed it despite knowing it because I felt like, you know, I have to hang out with people. I'll be seen as weird if I don't, whatever else it is. It doesn't matter who it is, right? And so I would do things that I would not normally do, didn't even like to do, but I thought that was just the way it was. You know, I allowed that to happen because I felt so poorly of myself. And so obviously the solution to this is self-love. When you have self-love, when you can learn to love yourself, which you absolutely can, when you spend time with yourself, work through your shadow, do the inner work, you will start seeing yourself for what you truly are. You know, I see myself as an infinite co-creative divine being at this point, and there isn't a single person on this planet that can convince me otherwise, because I've connected to that, I have felt that, I have experienced that, and that is how I see myself. And when you see yourself as a divine, infinite co-creative being, and you see everyone else as that as well, even if I come out of it every now and then, it's very hard for me to allow the things I used to allow in the past to come into my life. In fact, I don't, because it's how I see myself. When my self-image was of someone who was pathetic, of someone who was a waste of space, of someone who wasn't lovable, I attracted the equivalent of that. Either other people who were in that same place, or people who took advantage of that type of person. And so as my self-image improved, as I did the inner work, so did the people that I was attracting. Again, you attract what you are, and this includes the people you will start attracting in your life. So number 3 is you're in a low vibrational set point. Now this is very similar to self-image, and these will go hand in hand. When you are in a low vibrational set point, it's probably because you have a low self-image. And when you have a low self-image, it's almost guaranteed you're in a low vibrational set point. Because if your vibrational set point was at love, or at gratitude, or at happiness, or joy, or fulfillment, or peace, or well-being, you would automatically have a much better self-image because you would start to see what you truly are. And it would be impossible for you to see yourself as anything less than that. But when you are at a certain vibrational set point, which most of the world is at, by the way, most people are operating from a vibrational set point, which just means energy, by the way. Don't get too wound up about the terminology. It just means, what emotion are you usually operating from? What energy in motion are you usually in? You know, like I said, for my younger years, when I was a kid, teenager, and young adult, I was very depressed most of the time. And the highest emotion I ever would feel was anger. And I would fluctuate between shame, guilt, fear, anger, and every now and then I would get into pride. But you know, all of these things below the level 200 on the consciousness scale. And maybe sometimes I would go above it, but it was very, very rare. And so because of that, my vibrational set point, I would say, was at a pretty depressed level, probably at a level of shame and guilt, which is a very dangerous place to be. Shame, guilt, but it would fluctuate, luckily for me, because if I was in shame and guilt all of the time, that can lead to some really bad things for myself, especially. But the point is, if you're at that low vibrational set point, you can raise. When you become aware that, wow, I'm vibrating at an emotion that is very, very dense, very, very low. I feel shameful or guilt all the time. I feel fear all the time. Maybe I feel depressed all the time, which is usually a combination of many of these lower emotions. you get into that kind of state. When you become aware of that, you can start intentionally raising your vibration. You can do, like I said, the inner work. Things like meditation will not only help you with awareness, but transcending these emotions. You know, one thing that Abraham Hicks says that I love is if you meditate and clear out what's there, what you really are now has the space to come in. And so you don't even need to be like, oh, how do I get into love? How do I get into love? How do I get into happiness? If you can just remove the resistance that you're in, the joy, the love, the well-being will naturally flow in. The way that I can give you an analogy of this is there's a show I used to watch called Avatar: The Last Airbender. I still love this show. And there's a thing where the main character is getting trained under a monk or a guru or whatever you want to call it. And he showed him an example of the chakra centers. And it was basically these 7 pools that all flowed into each other, but there was all this gunk that was blocking the pools from flowing. There was moss and there were leaves, and it was blocking one pool from flowing into the next. And he showed that once you remove resistance and you remove the blockages, all of it starts to flow. And think of it like that when it comes to what you are and how it will naturally flow into you when you remove resistance. And so you don't have to think about, I need to add happiness, I need to add love. No, you just need to get back into a state of just allowing, of just letting go. This is why in spiritual circles, so many people talk about this idea of surrendering and letting go. Because once you let go of all of these things you've been holding on to, once you just allow yourself to remove the things that are ultimately putting you in these lower vibrational states, what you truly are will just naturally flow in. You won't even have to do anything. And what I notice is when I remove certain blockages within myself, when I lower the importance of something or I remove the resistance, I naturally start feeling better. I'm not focusing on feeling better. I'm just focusing on removing resistance. And when I do that, it naturally allows these other things to come in, and your vibrational set point will start to, over time, raise more and more. Number 2 is you continually spend time around those or in situations that are not aligned to you. Look, if you are hanging out with certain people, if you're hanging out in certain groups, or even just an individual, doesn't matter what it is, and you always feel bad, you always feel negative, you always feel heavy and helpless and hopeless or whatever else it is in these situations, this is your intuition letting you know you should not be in this situation. You know, again, I did this for so long, you know, because I thought I needed companionship in some way, that I would do anything, right? I would just be, even if I was being bullied or anything else, you know, made fun of, no matter how it was justified, I would stay in these places where I knew I felt like crap. And instead of spending my time away from that and finding at the time people who I could spend time with where it'd be better, where it would be more aligned, you know, I stayed in those kinds of situations. And so if you are staying in these kinds of situations, like I mentioned earlier, this is only going to allow that to grow. And that's how it was for me. You know, the more time I spent there, the more I got used to it and went, oh, this is normal. And so the more time I would spend in those situations, even again, if I was being put down, made fun of, or whatever else it is. Now, I chose to do this. I wasn't aware of this stuff, but I made this decision. And so again, once you become aware of it, make a new choice. And if you're hanging out in groups again where you don't feel good, you feel as though you're being ridiculed, you feel as though your energy is being dropped, and it doesn't even have to be ridicule. It could just be you're hanging out with people who complain a lot and you don't want to be that kind of energy, right? So it doesn't have to be, you know, very aggressive or it's people attacking you or anything of that nature. It could just be, you know, this is not the kind of person that I'm going to be able to grow with or really have magic moments with or really whatever else it is. It doesn't mean you have to completely cut them out of your life and unless that's what you choose to do. But ultimately, you need to spend less time in these kinds of groups that make you feel this way. And you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll feel the pit in your stomach. You'll feel your intuition giving you the signals, which essentially is the feelings that this is not right for you. It is not aligned. And especially when you become aware of what you truly are. When you're watching videos like this, it means you're moving more into your heart, which means you are becoming more and more aware of these things when they're happening. And again, where your focus goes, energy flows. When you take your focus off it, when you take your presence out of it and onto something else, you take your energy away from it and back into allowing more healthy relationships to come in. And number 1 is you lack self-care and you seek validation outside of yourself. Now, this is a common theme throughout this video, but again, one of the reasons that I hung out in groups that weren't really aligned to me is because I sought validation. I sought, you know, things outside of myself, the approval of the people around me. I sought like connection with people. I wasn't at the time getting much at home. You know, I felt trapped at home. I felt trapped at school. I felt trapped pretty much everywhere I was. And so I sought out connection. You know, I sought out someone else to give the love that I couldn't give myself at the time, or at least I didn't know I could give myself. Obviously, if I knew what I knew now, I would have known that there was so much inner work I could have done. You know, if I could just remove the resistance and connect to what I truly was, there would never be a day where I would go without connection and I would have been just fine. However, I didn't realize those things when I was a kid, a teenager, and only started learning about it when I was a young adult. And all up until that point, I sought validation outside of myself. I sought the validation from other people, and I lacked self-care. I didn't give myself time. I didn't give, you know, I thought it was more important to go hang out, even if it was in circles where I didn't fit in, or it wasn't aligned, or it just wasn't, it wouldn't have been good for anybody in the circle for me to be there, or for me to be there with them either. But I sought that, and instead I could have just done self-care. Self-care is when you do the shadow work. Self-care is when you take care of yourself, especially from the inner world perspective. This is when you're doing the meditations. This is when you're doing the exercises. It could be physical, it could be spiritual, it could be whatever else it is. It's when you are allowing yourself to grow, develop, and cultivate yourself more and more. This is when you will raise your vibrational set point. This is when you will start to remove the toxicity out of your life and bring in the positivity, bring in what's going to help you. When you actually start to practice self-care and you prioritize that. You know, a quote I really love is, "You cannot give from an empty cup." A lot of people think that prioritizing themselves is selfish, and this is just the conditioning of society. They want you to think that way because if you believe that you have to keep giving, it never allows you to come back within yourself and realize how powerful you truly are. And trust me, the more you give yourself, the more you're going to be able to give outside of yourself over time. But if you try and give someone who's thirsty some water from an empty cup, you're not actually able to help them. But imagine if your cup was overflowing. Imagine if your cup was so full, it was like, I have to give or else this is just overflowing anyway, you know? Like, imagine if that was the case. And self-care is what's going to get you there. You know, when you take care of yourself, you ultimately are going to have more of the resources, the tools, the awareness to help take care of others, and ultimately help others realize that they can take care of themselves. You know, you never want to pity someone. You never want to show someone that they are not enough. You want to help empower people to show them that actually you are also a co-creative divine infinite being. And yes, I'll fill your cup now, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to get to the point where yours is also overflowing. Because for every single person that is possible, and it's also your birthright. It is what you are. Anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this video. Again, probably a long one. I don't know. I can't see the time. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope if you are going through any of these things, you're noticing any of these signs, these reasons in your life, that you will heed the advice if it resonates with you. And I promise you, if you start implementing this stuff, you will start to move away from the toxicity as far as groups or people are concerned, and start allowing more of what's aligned to you in. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I appreciate you. As always, you are loved. You are worthy of love. You always have been. You always will be. And you are right now. And when you connect to what you truly are, you will feel that more strongly than you ever have before. Thank you so much. And I will see you in the next video.